I know how that is. I just toss and turn, or stare at the ceiling all night.
I actually kinda like the nighttime window screen, if you can believe it. So I just come look at it sometimes. If you look really, really close, you can see there's a dead pixel in the upper right corner.
That's so. Nope, don't see him.
In the back of my mind, it's always there.
No, I'll go bonkers looking for it. Cheers. I don't think it ruins the illusion, though. It's peaceful. But maybe I'm just used to looking at the bigger picture.
How many days of transport do we have left?
Let's see. Off the top of my head, around 237 days. Just under.
8 months. Hey, why do you think Pony Express put a lock on the medical room door, but not in the sleeping quarters?
I suppose for the same reason they put a lock on the cockpit. Safe.
Mouthwashing is a 2024 horror game from the folks over at Wrong Organ, the same people who made the peculiar yet fascinating How Fish is Made. This game, to me anyway, feels like it came out of nowhere and then quickly took off online. Places like TikTok and YouTube had a lot of content based around the game when it was new. I would honestly compare the buzz around Mouthwashing to the buzz that K-pop Demon Hunters currently has, where I see its characters and its story, all of it all across the net. Fan art, cosplays, videos, you name it. Mouthwashing costs about $13 American on Steam, and I would highly recommend picking it up and playing it yourself if you're into psychological horror games that leave you with a lot to ruminate on. I say all this because I really do not want you watching this video unless you've played the game already. And I mean, you still can, I'm not your mom. But this video is being written with the assumption that anyone watching it has already experienced the game themselves. As such, I don't really plan to walk through the plot nostalgia critic style, instead only really focusing on the scenes and parts of the narrative that I want to discuss. If all you want is a recommendation, here it is. Mouthwashing is amazing, a truly moving piece of art wrapped in an aesthetically pleasing yet unsettling package. And I would very much encourage going out and playing the game yourself if you haven't already. And to also save this video for when you've actually played the game, so that you can watch it. I do need the views still, after all. Mouthwashing is cheaper than a McDonald's meal, and you're gonna get a lot more out of it than you would the meal anyway. While I'm recommending things to you, watch K-pop Demon Hunters. It's quickly become my favorite movie, and I've seen it about 36 times. Anyway, this video's main goal is to allow me to ruminate on the game, discuss it, and share my thoughts with whoever happens to listen. I mainly just want to talk about the game and what I took away from it in the end. I'm actually not even sure how good this video is going to be by the end. It's taken me so long to write and make that, honestly, I'm kind of scared to see it finished, but if you're listening to this and watching this, then that means I did in fact finish it, so here we are. So let's start with the things that are maybe a tad easier for me to gather my thoughts on. The game has a low poly visual style, with the character models sporting polygonal shapes, including hands that have textures to show that there are multiple fingers, but none of those fingers ever leave the solid claw shape. There's just the line to give you that idea that there are, in fact, individual fingers. I've seen a lot of people compare this game's graphical style to that of the PS1 and its offerings, but being honest, I really don't see that. Specifically because the PS1 could never run a game looking like this, with the character models and environments being this detailed and running in-engine. But on that same coin, I understand why a lot of people first thought of the PS1. It's a lot like what the game Shovel Knight was like for the NES, in that its visual and art direction called to mind older platformers, but it could never have actually run on that hardware. It's clearly inspired by the older titles of that era, but it also takes advantage of newer technology without losing its intention of looking older. The game's visuals do go beyond that low poly look as well, as it also has a pretty damn good atmosphere, really selling the dark, claustrophobic, and uncomfortable energy that the Tulpar, despite being a fairly large freight ship, has. It feels exceptionally cramped and suffocating, especially in the later points of time in the narrative when chunks of the ship are closed off by the safety foam or just general destruction caused by the crash. Overall, it's a pretty small scale game, but you don't really feel the smallness of that scale while actually playing it, mainly due to how enrapturing that initial playthrough can be thanks to everything within it. The characters, despite not spending as much time with them as we would in a much longer game, and after all, this isn't a Persona 5 or a Baldur's Gate 3 with a 200+ hour runtime with several storylines for different characters that are meant to keep you enraptured through multiple playthroughs over and over again, discovering new things. It's a more concise and shorter title. It knows the story it wants to tell, and it tells you that story before leaving you alone with all that it said once it's all done and dusted. And in the spirit of that concise nature, the actual gameplay is pretty simple too. Hell, being entirely honest, it isn't anything that's really gonna challenge you, especially for someone really experienced with horror games or just games in general, like me. In this sense, it's kind of the exact horror game that's perfect for the Let's Player types to make videos on. I beat the game in about 3 hours when I originally played it back in 2024 around the time of its release. So I could picture someone with one of those Let's Play channels booting this game up and getting a decently long playthrough out of it and making a video for the day with that, gaining in the view counts as people watch them play throughout the entire runtime. And what I'm about to say next isn't me trying to discredit those types of videos, but I honestly would not recommend experiencing this game through a Let's Play, at least not the first time around. Yes, I can already see the argument. The gameplay is very much not that challenging, and you won't really find yourself tested by it, especially if you're familiar with games, like I said earlier. But even with all that said, I still feel like Mouthwashing, like basically every game in existence, is better experienced with you, yourself, the person watching this right now, being the one to play it. I'm not saying you can't also watch someone else play it after the fact, but don't watch someone else play it before you yourself have played it. Like, come on. Usually I don't feel the need to say that sort of thing because I usually just assume my audience are the kinds of people that actually play the games that I talk about, but realistically, that's not the case. I'm a video essay channel. There's probably a lot of people watching these videos that have never actually engaged with the things I talk about. You know, given how simple and clean the gameplay of this title is, paired with its short runtime, I don't think you could make a convincing argument not to play the game yourself if you're interested. I'm sorry I'm making this so much of a tangent, but I do want people to experience the games they're interested in for themselves, rather than experiencing them vicariously through third-party means, where they themselves aren't even the ones playing the game, even if that game in question has very minimalistic gameplay. I went into this game around the time it originally released, and I played it start to finish with no knowledge on what the game had in store, and it was an experience that stuck with me enough that I knew almost immediately that I wanted to write about it. And that desire stuck with me for a year. And the script I wrote over that year became this video, and there's a reason for that. The title has such an interesting way of presenting its narrative, as it is presented through the perspectives of two of its main leads. Curly, the captain of the Tulpar, who is left in a devastated state post the crash of the ship, and Jimmy, his quote-unquote friend, who volunteers to take over the role of captain upon Curly being unable to do so. The story isn't presented in a linear fashion, and thus we, the player, are expected to piece together the chronological order of events using what the game gives us, such as text denoting the point in time at the beginning of each section, as well as general context clues. Due to this, the game is able to hide things from the player until later, such as the true nature behind the crash that the game cold opens on. Because yes, you know from the very start that someone intentionally crashed the ship because you, the player, the person watching this video right now, are made to do it yourself with no context as to what you're doing or why you are doing it. Later on, through character dialogue, it's clear the other characters are under the belief that Curly, the ship's captain, was the one who crashed the ship. And of course, none of them were there, and the only one who was there was Jimmy, who they have to go off the word of, especially since the only other witness was Curly, and right now he's, let's say, out of commission. This opening is also pretty good at convincing you, the player, that Curly was the one who crashed the ship, given it is the captain's seat that controls the ship. Plus, Curly is the only other playable character besides Jimmy in the title. So, your mind is going to connect dots and maybe start thinking that, for a bit anyway, maybe it was Curly. Now, of course, if you already know spoilers going into the game, you're not gonna fall for that, but I'm speaking about this under the idea that your first playthrough, you knew nothing. Obviously, as I'm kind of alluding to, later on in the plot, it's revealed that it was actually Jimmy who did this, and he did this for a reason that I'll get into later on in the video. The opening also shows us our first bit of characterization for the Pony Express company, considering the fact that they're docking about 4,000 credits, the currency that they're getting paid in, for poor navigation. It's the earliest example of something we see hinted at across the ship as pieces of world building, in that the company, even while their employees are working, continue to try and squeeze as much money out of them as physically possible. Vending machines in the kitchen and lounge area that supply food are another example of this. And that one isn't even directly highlighted by any dialogue like the docking of pay for the poor navigation. You just gotta notice that. Combine this with stuff like the one communal birthday thing, because the company is too cheap to provide the resources necessary to accommodate for every birthday that could pass on the exceptionally long trips, so they just do the most acceptable option that costs them the least amount of money. It's also these things that, when taken all together, make it clear that Pony Express is a corporation that gives about zero fucks about the people that work under them, and thus it makes perfect sense that they'd fire everyone mid-job when they have the chance to automate this service, and why no one really came looking for the Tolpar crew upon the ship crashing. I honestly think, no matter how all this went down, there was never a chance the Pony Express would even risk the money to recover these bodies, even if it would provide some sort of closure for their families. Although, outside of Daisuke, the game never really elaborates on any of their families, outside of vague notions of the general idea of families. It's just one of those things that's safe to assume. Another thing that shows how willing Pony Express is to cheap out is how the psych evaluations are this printed out sheet that everyone is required to fill out and has all the same questions for everyone. And it's conducted by Anya, the ship's nurse, who is essentially saddled with all the medical responsibilities as a result of that. And this is in spite of Anya failing to get into medical school 8 separate times. I don't know how she does an amazing job taking care of Curly, but that's besides the point. She hasn't given up on that pursuit regardless, but typically, a nurse would be accompanied by a doctor, especially for a long delivery trip just like this. It's actually during the psych evaluation scene that I feel something important is conveyed.
Are you listening?
Yeah. I'm so sorry. Couldn't sleep again. But I passed the psych eval.
Well, you gave the same answers as last time. I do wish you'd open up a little more, Captain. These evaluations aren't just about you.
As long as I'm fit to fly in your eyes, Anya.
Oh, stop it. Guess that means I only have one more eval left to do.
Jimmy?
He acts as if I do these things for fun. Then I have to make a report with things like, I have found myself sexually excited at the sight of cartoon horses.
Well, I could take it off your hands.
Really?
I've known him a long time. He wouldn't try any bullshit with me.
I suppose you are the captain.
I am the captain.
Thank you. What a relief. Oh, before I forget, Swansea asked me to give you this.
They can't expect me to perform miracles.
Not sure what it means, but sounds like fun. Good luck, Captain.
In that scene, we see Anya and Curly interact. In this interaction, we see that they're fairly casual and comfortable with one another, something I feel is important to set up now, considering what we learn much later in the game. We also learn in this scene that Jimmy does not take the evaluations all that seriously, which has made it a more frustrating process for Anya. And as a result, Curly offers a solution by doing it for her. And I say solution with spoken quotation marks because it doesn't really fix anything in my opinion. I mean, sure, the job gets done, but Jimmy still doesn't treat Anya with any amount of respect. Plus, even though Curly's response to the cartoon horses thing was amusement, I'm doubtful Anya found Jimmy's jokes as funny, especially since it's clear, even this early on, that she's not comfortable around him. Jimmy is a character that I'm going to dive way deeper into later, but I wanted to highlight this because this behavior of Curly's, of immediately trying to find a solution that's a quote-unquote middle ground, is something that becomes more apparent and far more dangerous down the line. He doesn't want Anya to be stressed or upset, but he also doesn't want to reprimand Jimmy if he can help it. So instead, he becomes the middleman to try and keep the peace. That's his goal. Curly is someone who wants to find solutions to fix things. And that's not a terrible trait in its own right, but if unchecked, if not kept with a level of self-awareness necessary, a trait like that can easily become something less than helpful, especially when paired with the fear of conflict. Hell, when Curly does approach Jimmy with a psych eval, he's very casual and jokey with Jimmy himself.
I take it Anya diagnosed you with being sane, right?
Just off center, but it's what keeps me on my toes. I said I'd do yours. I want to hear all about those cartoon horses. Is this something you were born with, or a recent development?
Alright, shut up.
The scene also gives us a brief idea on Anya's character. She's competent and seems pretty normal, if a tad meek, but not cartoonishly so. She's even able to kind of joke around with Curly in this scene. I mention this because later parts from Jimmy's perspective paint her in a very different light, which is one of those things I really like about Mouthwashing and how it presents its story. The two perspectives do have an effect on how certain things are viewed, and that's something I feel the game loves to take advantage of. Like the opening, as I mentioned before, playing with your lack of knowledge, as well as the first-person perspective to convince you, the player, the person watching this video right now, of the same thing that Jimmy has convinced the rest of the crew. The crew that you're now a part of as the player. I've seen a lot of people take the game and how it presents its narrative at face value, even seeping its way into how people view certain characters. Specifically, how certain people see Anya. We spent a lot of this game's runtime seeing the world through Jimmy's eyes. The guy that we know does not even see Anya as a person. Exploring the environment at certain points of the story show us a bit more of who she is outside of this job. We see through her interactions with Daisuke and Swansea that she's a pretty friendly person in general.
You're gonna use the Whalley Express provided cake recipe? At least make it correctly. You should find all the ingredients and recipe in the kitchen.
Swansea really likes that cake. Don't tell anyone.
So it's not like her discomfort with Jimmy comes from a general social anxiety or antisocial behavior. He's the outlier with her, not the rule. New players may not even immediately pick up on this, especially given everything else going around, but people with full context and hindsight know that she has every right to feel unsafe around him. Seeing the majority of the game from Jimmy's perspective means that what we see is filtered through his eyes, his viewpoint, and the difference between Anya coming off a bit shy, but generally fairly average as a person when we're Curly, versus her meekness being almost amplified when we're Jimmy, speaks to the effectiveness of that use of perspective. It oddly enough reminds me a little of, and I'm asking for everyone to not be weird about me referencing this game, please. I'm asking that we all be adults. I'm trying to make a point. We good? Okay. It oddly enough reminds me a little of The Coffin of Andy and Lele, another horror title that has two playable characters, which uses said dual protagonists to present two different perspectives on similar events. As a character study, it allows us to dive deeper into the minds of both Andrew and Ashley, and thus get a more complete picture of their relationships and pasts, as well as their lines of thinking. As a game that's mainly about an Ouroboros of abuse, having the player engage with the narrative from both perspectives leads to giving a lot to dig into and dissect from a psychological and narrative perspective when engaging with the game's story and its themes. We get to experience this horrible and gross relationship and the gross cycle of codependent abuse from both sides, as well as seeing parts of their lives from before the start of the game from their points of view. Seeing things like Andrew be instilled with the idea that he lives in service of Ashley from an early age at the start of episode 3 is just one of the many examples where the game benefits from its use of multiple perspectives. I'd say, in a similar way, Mouthwashing utilizes its nature as a perspective-led horror title to tell us a little more about its characters, to take advantage of the fact what the player does and doesn't know is entirely up to them. We aren't just shown how little Jimmy values Anya via his actions. We're forced to see things from his perspective and shown how he views things. His vision blocks out her dead body when he goes into the medbay post her death. His vision is potentially the reason we never see any physical proof that Anya was ever pregnant to begin with, because he's mentally blocking out any reminder of what he's done despite the game taking place over the course of months. And it's his vision that exaggerates certain traits of Anya's that he focuses on to quote-unquote justify how he treats her as if she doesn't matter. He's a horrible person, and we're put into his shoes, and that's horrifying. Jimmy, known by many names in the fandom, is a truly deplorable person. He's an exceptionally self-centered person, and I think even what I've already talked about with him paints a decent picture of just how bad he is. Jimmy assaulted Anya. This is a plot point in the game that anyone who has played it knows, and it's easily one of the most talked about parts of the narrative. Her pregnancy is a direct result of his horrible actions, and this explains her strong discomfort and fear of him. It's why, when the crew are made to sleep in the lounge area post the crash, she sleeps by the statue of Polly, which is motion activated as a proximity alarm. It's why we never saw her in a room alone. She was always with someone else at all points of the story. She didn't feel safe being alone. And honestly, how could she?
Anya, as our nurse, you never got psych evals. I should have thought of that. You could have come to me if you were feeling stressed.
What would you have done?
Anything. Anything. You, the crew, are my responsibility. I told you so over and over, yeah?
I'm pregnant.
You're... what? Who would you...
Captain? I told you.
Listen to me. We can fix this. I've known him a long time. I'll talk to him.
I knew you'd never give me the gun to protect myself, so the least I can do is make sure he never gets it either.
She told Curly about her concerns before it happened. That's why she says, "I told you," when Curly asks who could have even done that to her. She raised her concerns before, but Curly, despite any intention to help his crew, didn't register it. His bias for Jimmy, his friend who he wanted to see the best in, stopped him from doing what he needed to do as captain. And then, when she openly confides in him, tells him what's happened, all Curly can say is, "We can fix this." He wants to smooth things over, can't fathom the idea of giving up on someone he saw as a friend, and thus it clouds his judgment and ability to do what needs to be done. People rightfully see the game throw around the phrase, "take responsibility," and attach it to Jimmy. His inability to ever take responsibility for anything he does is a consistent trait of him throughout the entire story. However, I feel it could also apply to Curly as well. Now, is Jimmy worse than Curly? Personally, I'd say so. But is Curly free of blame? Absolutely not. And just to really hammer in home my point, the day right after the last scene, Anya tells Jimmy about the pregnancy, and
I told him.
Anya, you should have waited for me. What did he say?
Nothing that'd make a difference.
Did he seem angry? Where did he go?
He just walked away. Curly, I don't want him in here anymore.
Hold on. Fuck. Just wait. I need to find him. Everything's going to be okay.
Anya says, with no doubt in her words, that she does not want Jimmy around her anymore. She doesn't want to be around him. She doesn't want to have to look at him. She doesn't want to have to be forced to be reminded of what's happened, and Curly's only response is to focus on Jimmy. I feel like Anya's line, "nothing that make a difference," was not only her being honest about the fact that whatever Jimmy said changed nothing, but it was also her referencing Curly's own responses to the situation. She doesn't feel like anything Jimmy said could potentially make a difference in Curly's mind. That anything Jimmy says could finally make something click in Curly's head. And yet she still takes the chance to say clearly that she doesn't want Jimmy around her anymore. She doesn't want to be silenced. And she shouldn't be silenced either. But Curly still doesn't quite get it. He doesn't see it. He can't. Mouthwashing is a game where the person who is the narrative's antagonist is also the point of view character for most of the runtime. And when we aren't Jimmy, we're his enabler. Someone so blinded by their own bias for someone that they can't see clearly what's right in front of them, and people suffer as a direct result of that blindness. Anya suffers because of that blindness. Jimmy crashed the ship after Anya told him about the pregnancy. He did this to run away from responsibility. He thought if they all died in a freak crash, then no one could ever find out about what he did to Anya, and he wouldn't have to face the consequences of what he's done. He wouldn't have to deal with the consequences of destroying the life of another human being and leaving them with the weight of the trauma he inflicted upon her. He doesn't care about how she feels. He doesn't feel guilty or anything like that. He just doesn't want to have to deal with the fallout of it all. Too messy. And yet, despite all this, Jimmy spends the entire game with this idea in his mind that he's the hero, that anyone else would do the same in his position. He didn't see anything wrong with drugging Swansea or manipulating Daisuke into going to the vents, despite the safety concerns. And he certainly didn't see anything wrong with how he treated Anya. He didn't see anything wrong in killing everyone on the ship just to service his own desires. Every single death on that ship is, in one way or another, his damn fault. And he just can't take one moment to... Remember that scene I opened the video with? The one with Anya and Curly in the lounge talking about the dead pixel? That dead pixel conversation could be symbolic of the two of them and how they've dealt with this situation. Anya being unable to stop thinking about it. It always being in the back of her mind no matter what. Meanwhile, Curly can't even see it when he's trying to because he's blinded by his own biases. Anya said she likes the nighttime window screen and even comments if you can believe it, so I think that is meant to represent her job in general. Meanwhile, the dead pixel, which takes away from the night sky, represents Jimmy, who ruins it, and she's unable to stop thinking about it. Curly, meanwhile, states he can't see it, but also states that he doesn't think it ruins the illusion. And the thing is, with the analogy that I'm proposing, Curly's line there is haunting. He has this illusion in his mind that Jimmy can get better, that his shady past doesn't define him, and that if he just gives him an opportunity to turn over a new leaf, he'll just take it. But that's not what happens. Jimmy isn't someone who can get better because Jimmy doesn't see anything wrong with himself. That's a key component of getting better that Jimmy simply lacks, and Curly can't see that. The illusion is unbroken for him as a direct result. I think it's very intentional that a conversation about this dead pixel led into Anya asking how many days of transport they had left, a question that's answer ended up being around 8 months. It then leads into the question that, upon my first playthrough, made alarm bells go off in my head. Anya asking why the sleeping quarters don't have locks, but the medical room does. Curly, without giving it much thought, shrugs it off and says it's because safety, which I feel also illustrates just how oblivious he is because he can't see the obvious problem with the bedrooms not having locks. He doesn't realize that safety is exactly why there should be locks on the door.
Jim, I can fix this.
What do you think will happen when we get back?
We can figure all this out. You and me.
All I ever hear is how great of a leader you are. God, it's so annoying. But now, what do you think will happen now when we get back?
We'll fix this. Together.
Everything you and I worked for in our lives, accomplishments, changes, none of it'll matter.
You've gone through difficult situations before. This won't be any different. Work through it one day at a time.
It's not just me, is it? You were supposed to be the one who had everything under control. You said so yourself. The ship, the crew, everything that happened here, that was your responsibility, Captain. That is what you'll be hearing the rest of your life. Or this can all be remembered as a tragedy. Despite what must have been the best efforts of its acclaimed captain, the Tulpar crew was never found. No one survived to tell the tale. You're standing at the top. Feet in cement. I get it now. Right?
Right.
I'll take care of it.
Jim, tell me you didn't. I should have. I didn't. What the fuck did you do?
Two characters I've kind of glossed over until this point in the essay, this point being about 4,300 words into my script, and on the 10th page of said script at that, are Daisuke and Swansea. I've mentioned them here or there, but most of the video so far has been focused on Anya, Jimmy, and Curly, which is why they're the three on the thumbnail, by the way. I'd argue they're the main central characters of the story, and they're the ones that captured my attention the most. But that's not to say Daisuke and Swansea are without merit or purpose in the plot. As I've said before, the game is pretty concise and tightly written as a result. Nobody in the crew feels as though they can be taken out of the story, and nothing would change. Daisuke is an intern on the ship, a late addition to the crew at that, shown by the fact that there's only 4 cryopods and not 5. He is mainly mentored by Swansea, the ship's one-man maintenance crew. Early into the game, it's presented to us that Daisuke is the goofy Magician Arcana bro-type character a la Junpei Iori or, more fittingly, Yosuke Hanamura. Meanwhile, Swansea is a grizzled old man who has been working the longest and is on the opposite end of the age scale from Daisuke. It is shown to us that they have the silly guy who does something silly and then the old guy groans and rolls his eyes type dynamic, and the game makes a point to consistently pair the two up, which makes sense given Swansea acts as a mentor of sorts to Daisuke. For most of the game, Daisuke is kept up as the optimist of the group. He's the only person on the crew that, at no point in the plot, learns about Jimmy's misdeeds, and he dies without ever finding out at that. That said, the game does allow for Daisuke to be more than just the happy-go-lucky sunshine boy that he appears to be on the surface. One interaction between him and Jimmy shows how, when the severity of the situation has truly hit him, he starts to ruminate on his life, how he got here, and how he hopes his mother doesn't blame herself for his eventual death.
How many of those have you had? Those will kill you before
anything else? I know. My mom found this internship for me. Such a slacker, she said. I don't know. I just never knew what I wanted to be. I never was good at anything. Total screw up.
We're not done yet, Daisuke.
I just hope she doesn't blame herself.
The game draws parallels between him and the sun by having the way Swansea puts Daisuke out of his misery at the end of his story be similar to how he cut the axe into the face of the sun on the window screen in the lounge. I'm making a point about Daisuke's innocence because I feel like there's a reason something we see over the course of the game is how Jimmy takes advantage of Daisuke's nature repeatedly. He takes advantage of Daisuke's trust repeatedly. Jimmy is the one who talks Daisuke into going into the vent. The same vent Swansea already said was dangerous, which I mentioned way earlier in the script. Jimmy's the one who convinces Daisuke to go along with the drugging Swansea plan so that they can even get into the room under the guise of it all being for the best to save Anya. And in the end, all of that just results in another dead body whose blood is on the hands of Jimmy.
Don't do it. Stop! 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 I can fix this!
Why the fuck do you keep saying that? Are you hearing yourself?
There's that phrase again, the one Curly kept saying. Although instead of "we can fix this," which is how Curly would put it, Jimmy distinctly says "I can fix it." He'll solve the problem. He'll fix everything. Very much continuing his self-grandizing narrative that he's the hero of the story, who could solve all the problems and set everything right. It's crazy how he can still see himself that way after everything. Swansea even calls out the absolute absurdity in this mindset of his in that scene, because at this point, it's post Anya having told him about what Jimmy did, so I absolutely see this line as more holistic than it initially appears. Despite how generally annoyed Swansea comes off with Daisuke, it's clear he does care about him. So much so that he's bleeding out, suffering on the floor because of Jimmy's bullshit. He decides to do what he sees as right and put the boy out of his misery.
The bleeding won't stop. Just try to stay still, Daisuke. I need a second to think. We can fix this.
Hey kid, you hear me? Daisuke.
Whoa, wait, hey, stop. Don't move.
It's all right, Daisuke. Calm down. This line of work. You could never have become like old miserable Swansea. What a tragedy. Decades of hauling ass for the Pony Express. Big mighty bruiser with all his shiny tools. This is where it got me. The good life, huh? I thought you were dumber than a can of paint. Always chewing my ear off about nothing. A useless goddamn ray of sunshine. Not an A student, career workhorse, or force of ambition. Just a goddamn good kid trying his best. You could have taught an old fool like me a lot. Close your eyes, Daisuke.
You monster! I could have fixed them, Swansea! I have to do everything myself! Why can't any of you just give me some time to fucking think?
How do you still not understand? It's over. End of the fucking line. You won't be suffering one more second of your delusions.
Unbelievable! Stop pretending! I know all about your plans, Swansea. I went to utility. I saw what you've been hiding down there. Sneaking around with that axe, telling Anya who knows what. Now this, you're making sure you're the one who gets inside that cryopod.
Ha! Oh, I sure did talk to Anya. But it was here telling me all sorts of things instead, wasn't it? Shouldn't the captain go down with this ship?
After this exchange, Swansea gives Jimmy the chance to get in the cryopod and escape. But Jimmy doesn't do that. He goes into the medical bay to get the gun, his plan obviously being to kill Swansea and...
Jimmy!
What really happens between Swansea and Jimmy from there is sorta up in the air. But eventually, Jimmy gets Swansea tied up to a chair and is in the perfect position to bring his plan together.
I have something to say. So shut the fuck up and listen. I spent 13 years half cut up to my eyeballs. Drunk, to put it mildly. Then suddenly I saw it. A street light shining in my face. 500 gigawatts of the power of God. A vision of my bloated body found somewhere in a ditch scared me straight. So I got a collar shirt, a mortgage, a credit card, all the things that make a good man. I hoped I could raise my children be better than their old man. I wanted to believe that I was never one step back from my worst self. But truth is, discipline, drive, routine, the endless fucking desperation to get shit done, a loving wife, great kids, sobriety. I'm telling you, accomplishments I'd chased all my life never felt as good as I'd expected when I crossed the finish line. So now that we're at the end, taking inventory, those nights spinning out of my head, sinking into the sofa, broken glass in my palms, bleeding dry, the funniest thing ever. Old dogs laughing and snarling on a waterbed floor, mocking the moon for daring to show its face. All nausea and wreckage, vomit and ugly cruelty. The only problem in the world, an empty bottle. Those were my best days. Yeah, those were my best days. I got nothing to hide, ready to face the music. I can see myself for what I am. But you, cowardly, selfish motherfucker, and you can't even see it. I should have been able to protect the kid. If I had done one right thing, I wish it had been to give him one small chance off this goddamn rock.
Swansea, I'm going to fix everything. We're gonna make it.
Fuck you.
I think this speech from Swansea is important because he's highlighting all of his worst traits right as he stares death in the face, because he's not afraid, because he has nothing to hide, because despite all of these shitty things that may very well be just 100% true about him, he's not someone who is so deluded that they can't see themselves for who they are. The fact Jimmy's response to this is just his, at this point, almost canned response of, I can fix this, only helps cement not only Swansea's point with this speech, but also his thoughts on Jimmy entirely. Thoughts he emphasizes with his final words before Jimmy gets him twice in the head. In Egyptian myth, Anubis would weigh the hearts of the dead to determine if they were allowed entry into the realm of the dead or not. The phrase heavy heart comes to mind, though in this instance the heaviness comes from the guilt and regret, and in a sense, you could argue Swansea's heart is not as heavy as you'd expect because of the mindset that he has for himself. He's not going out with regret. He says it himself, doesn't he? The game ends with Jimmy taking Curly's mangled body to the remaining cryopod and freezing him while taking his own way out, convinced in his sick little mind that this is how he can fix this, how he can be a good captain and take responsibility, when the ironic thing is him doing this isn't any of those things. The ending of Mouthwashing is not satisfying, it isn't conclusive, it doesn't feel good. It leaves you empty. It leaves you hollow. And it leaves you feeling worse than you felt when you started. A situation that could have been avoided, lives that could have been spared, damage that could have gone undone. There is no resolution. There is no fixing anything. Like, we could sit here thinking about all the what ifs all day. What if Curly took Jimmy to task before it was too late? What if Daisuke hadn't gone along with Jimmy's plan? What if he hadn't gone in that vent? What if the Pony Express hadn't cheaped out at every turn? What if Curly hadn't told everyone about the company firing them when he did? It's all just what if at the end of the day. There are no alternate endings. There are no alternate paths. It's just this. It's just this.
Shut up! Curly tried his best. I did too, but he's the better man. I see that now. We can both still make it. I'll take care of him. I'm taking responsibility. Curly. Captain, I'm so sorry. Yes! Yes, I do. I fucked up! But I can still make this right. Our worst moments don't make us.
this game never left my mind. Why the minute I originally finished it, I knew that I had to write about it. And yet, despite that knowing, despite that feeling, that writing took almost an entire year for me to actually get out. I get why writing this video was so hard for me. I get it. As people, as humans, we seek resolution. A desire for evil to be brought to justice, for stories to have conclusions, for good people to triumph in the end over evil, for everything to be okay, and for the sun to rise again. But Mouthwashing isn't that kind of story. Mouthwashing is brilliant, in ways I don't think I could ever do justice on my own. And it becoming the success it did is something I'll always be happy about, because everyone at Wrong Organ who worked on this game did such a good job at making something truly haunting that sticks with you. If you made it this far, I want to thank you all for listening to my stream of consciousness, and I hope you got something out of it. Genuinely, this video has been exceptionally hard for me to write, and even now I'm still not entirely satisfied with what I made, and I don't know if I ever will be. But I had to make something.